right, everybody. Well, welcome back to the coldest side of the pillow. We got episode 3 tonight. Wonderful, wonderful episode 3. Pretty excited to continue on this journey as I said last time, on the coldest side of the pillow. Welcome back. I'm Dr. Gilbert Guzman, here to kind of bring forth anything that I guess I feel is pertinent for you to understand. So tonight I'm going to talk about a couple things. One thing I'm pretty excited about is Auburn has gone to the Elite Eight, or is going to the Elite Eight after defeating Michigan last night. Pretty excited about that. It's the third time the school has gone to the Elite Eight, so it's pretty excited. War Damn Eagle. I interestingly always consider Auburn kind of an alma mater for me to some degree. I didn't graduate from Auburn, but I did go to Auburn my freshman year, and will always be a true diehard Auburn fan. It was my dream school as I was a kid, kind of grew up. Most of my other family members in Alabama happen to be Alabama fans. I got a couple cousins that are Auburn fans, but usually the state is divided by either being an Auburn or an Alabama fan. So pretty excited for them. They're going to see Michigan State, I believe tomorrow, Sunday, 3:30, March 30th, 2025, I think. But it's been some great basketball. You know, I even have my wife watching basketball with me. So, and interestingly, I'm 6'7", only played basketball my sophomore year of high school. I was always a individual who liked track and football more. So I spent all of my time in and on the track, and I was primarily a jumper, but did some sprints as well, high jump, javelin, and then ended up going to Auburn and joined the track team there as a decathlete. But anyway, pretty excited about that. So tonight, you know, aside from really talking about that basketball, I'm going to spend some time. I did make a promise that I was going to stay away from dimming. So I'm going to really bring forward another topic that I spoke about or wrote about and have kind of used as this kind of catalyst for some of my thinking, and it's relevant today because we are involved in this really kind of advancement of technology, this technologically advanced world. You know, we got the world of AI, we have the world of lots of other technologies coming, you know, whether it's robots, you know, whether it's the advancement of computers, computer chips, so on and so forth. So I introduced to you Fred Davis. Fred Davis in 1989 created the Technology Acceptance Model, or TAM, or also known as TAM, and really wanted to talk about the Technology Acceptance Model because it's part of this. You know, when I included it in my dissertation, it was the other framework that I used side by side with dimming. And so my dissertation and some of the most recent research I've done is more so focused on, you know, productivity and talking about how do we think about what COVID did, the Great Resignation, and so on. And what did those things do to the workforce that exists today? You know, there was millions of people during COVID who either got laid off, furloughed, or just decided to make an industry or career shift. And with those changes, there's this kind of gap that exists in the world of work. Regardless of the industry, there's these gaps. We know that there's a shortage of nurses out there. But when I look specifically into certain industries like grocery retail, just having a really kind of long tenured background in grocery retail, you know, there was a opportunity for us, or really me, to kind of determine what are some of these gaps that exist. Because when we think about a system, if we go back to the world of systems, people are a component of a successful system, you know, and with people being a component of this system, it's important for us to understand if these people don't return back, whether it's specific to an industry or not, if people don't return back to the workforce, how do we kind of fill in that gap of productivity? By filling in that gap of productivity, often most people, as I had mentioned, Jacob Stoller had written that book, and I called it Reimagining Productivity, but it's actually called Productivity Reimagined. And we talk about tech omnipotence and so on. It's important for us to truly understand how do we fill these gaps, because the demand of products, goods, services, and so on, it still exists today. It's still relevant today, and it's probably more so than ever. There truly is a opportunity to increase the world of customer service. But when we think about technology, this technology acceptance model, again written by Fred Davis, or kind of developed and coined by Fred Davis in 1989, is relevant today. And there's really two primary components of this technology acceptance model. And as I wrote in my dissertation, and again, some of the research that I've done, I've actually said, hey, if we have technology filling in the gaps that exist from people missing out of this system, you have to be able to accept it. The users themselves have to be able to accept it, whether on the consumer side or even the worker side, the kind of internal versus external side. And this technology acceptance model really uses two kind of components, two primary components, broken down to the perceived ease of use and the perceived usefulness. And what that means is it's reliant on the perception of the intended user. Again, whether internal or external, it's reliant upon the perception of that individual user. And for somebody to really be able to use a technology that gets inserted into their organization, gets inserted into the organization that they shop with, it's important that they perceive the ease of use. How easy is it to use this? And the usefulness. What benefit do I get out of it? Why should I have to be able to use this? Is important, because if you don't live through this framework, at least to some degree, you might be inserting technologies that aren't necessarily accepted. And I've seen this in the day-to-day at work. I've seen it as people are shopping at the grocery store. I remember when I was a store manager at Kroger, a lot of people avoided self-checkout, and we know that 70% plus of the transactions that happen in a grocery store are 15 items or less. You can breeze through the self-checkout, but there's a thought of, and depending on kind of the generation, some people feel that technologies such as self-checkout are actually taking away jobs, but rightfully so, they may be, right? If we said we had 20 cash registers and we cut half of those down, turn them into self-checkout robots, sure, you don't need 20 cashiers. You only need one to man up to 8-10 robots. But I say that because I remember when we were spending time trying to get people to use that technology and really show them, hey, here's how easy it is to use, and here's how useful it is for you. You can get in and out. And if we go back to COVID, we know that a lot more of the customers spent time going to self-checkout because you kind of had social distancing. You wanted to make sure that you didn't have to go around people, and that kind of increased the usage of it. And now you'll see a lot more people going through self-checkout, even with more than 15 items. And some of these self-checkout robots, depending on the company, have actually increased their kind of holding capacity of items. It used to be a small space where once you scan an item, there was a few kind of square feet for you to place your items. Now they kind of have this little a larger space, or this kind of roll around little circular piece that allows you to have more space to place your items. So we're adapting these technologies, and a lot of people are figuring out, hey, here's the ease of use, self-checkout, and the usefulness of it. But when we think about technology acceptance today, it's not just self-checkout, it's not just self-serve technologies. There's a lot of other things that exist, right? When we think about AI has come in, artificial intelligence, and the landscape is really focused on this. A lot of companies are integrating this. A lot of companies exist today as a kind of AI or providing software as a service to some degree. They're providing that as a offering from a business to business perspective. Since that landscape has changed, and if we focus on AI, it's pretty easy to use, right? If we think about Chat GPT, we can type in a prompt. Generative AI is allowing you to easily type in a prompt, and even to the point now you can input audio and have the generative AI systems produce a response to that audio created prompt. And it's pretty easy to use, right? There's a lot of other layers into that I see that some people don't know how to use, but most of it is kind of speeding up the response time, and even taking into account some of the kind of uniqueness of the way people use really what I would say is their mental models. And the generative AI is able to produce the results that you're often looking for. But when we think about what this looks like today, the technology acceptance model has really increased just the usage of technology, but we don't necessarily use this framework to say, hey, this is what we need to do in an organization to make sure that the technology that we do want to insert sticks. And so up front, we view technology as users today. They have to have a kind of an immediate value that you're going to receive from utilizing that technology. And often that does go into the usage of the technology and even the development to some degree, but it's often missed because I have seen a lot of technology, even in my work today, that doesn't necessarily create an immediate value. And when I think about the users themselves, and if we go back to thinking of KPIs and we think about all of the information that goes into a system, goes into a process that requires somebody to utilize a specific technology, that perception on ease of use and usefulness is not necessarily apparent or easily recognized. And that makes me think that we have to find a way to expand on this 1989 framework and kind of create a technology acceptance model, 2, 3, 4, version 2, 3, or 4. Because ultimately, if we don't build technologies and we think that we're kind of in this vacuum when we create technologies and we say that it's going to be easy to use, we're going to have gaps in the actual usage, because the usage will only come into play when that perception of the ease of use and the usefulness is there. However, when we think about work, when we think about the things that are kind of placed upon us to make sure that we do our job and we do our jobs effectively, we run into the challenge of most people, again, tying the behaviors, the results, and so on to KPIs. And again, if we tie things into KPIs and we focus on numerical quotas, we focus on the results or the carrot, the bonus that's tied to the usage of these technologies to ultimately get the results that the organization wants us to achieve, then we're kind of doing it for no reason, or without true understanding. And my mind goes to the world of perception, and I'm going to look up the actual definition of perception. And when we think about perception, you can't necessarily understand how things work if you don't have a true kind of positive perception. And again, the perception is defined as the process of interpreting sensory information to create a meaningful understanding of the world, influenced by factors like past experiences, context, and individual goals. And that's right off the internet. And when I think of that definition, a meaningful understanding of the world, I can think about what goes on at work today, and sure, we have a lot of technology coming in, we have a lot of technology being inserted, and it's being rolled out rather quickly, but the perception of the ease of use and or even the usefulness isn't meaningfully understood in the context of a lot of the users. And I think we have a really big opportunity to kind of bring forward the technology acceptance model and find a better way to explain things for really the creation of the user's perceptions for both the ease of use and the usefulness. And I think with that, we have a gap. I feel like there's a gap, and there are a lot of research, or there is a lot of research on the technology acceptance model, but it's not necessarily in the context of how it was written in 1989. For example, Fred Davis in 1989, there's a quote that he left. He said, "Perceived usefulness is defined as the degree to which a person believes that using a particular system or technology would enhance his or her job performance." That's from an internal perspective. We often say that the technologies we're implementing or inserting will lead to an enhancement or sometimes even an augmentation of someone's job performance. But because they're so fixated, or because the users themselves are so fixated on the goals, they forget to create an understanding of how does this affect my job performance? What do I need to do? What are my actual inputs today? Aside from the goals, you erase all of the goals, you erase all the KPIs and metrics. Do we allow people to work? And I think in episode 2, I actually mentioned that we need to let people just, how do we figure out why we're doing work in the first place? We get so tied up in the information that we forget that, and even in I guess I'm going to mention Deming mentioned to eliminate those exhortations and slogans, and even some of the concept of driving out fear. People really aren't allowed to have a perception on how easy this is and how useful it is, because the technology being inserted is the way forward. It's a way we're going to do these things. But if we think about what Fred Davis had said in another quote, is even if potential users believe that a given application is useful, I can think about a million examples at work today. They may at the same time believe that the system is too hard to use and that the performance benefits of usage are outweighed by the effort of using the application. And this happens, and it kind of negates that concept of ease of use. It kind of gets in the way of somebody being able to say, hey, yep, I think this works great. I think it's amazing technology. I think it's amazing resource to help me do my job better. But I don't know if the benefits are necessarily there. So it's an interesting concept, interesting kind of framework, if you will, but technology itself, it has to be intuitive today. It has to be meaningful. Some people are using technology as kind of whether it's integrating AI, right? And while ChatGPT can be said as one of the first movers, they'll always have that first mover advantage when it comes to the usage of AI and, some of their models and algorithms. It's important that we at least take into account that sometimes when technology is forced by way of saying, hey, this is the way forward and this is going to help us change and kind of create a competitive advantage, it can often stifle some of the performance that we're used to getting. One thing that I always say is, and if we go back to systems, we forget that. And if you looked into Jay Forrester's world of causal loop diagrams and system dynamics, there's a lot of variables outside of this kind of flow chart and linear system of how things work. And with all of those variables, those are the things that we manage. And if we don't necessarily manage all of the, or if we don't understand all of the variables that go into the processes and go into the actual flow chart, then we can miss the mark on what we're really trying to do. And when we think about data, clean data in is kind of clean data out. And obviously it's up to interpretation and understanding the usage of data. But when we get to the point of saying that, hey, the results that we have are great, these are great results, the system is working, is it truly working? Has the technology been truly accepted? Has the perception of ease of use or the perception of usefulness actually been effective? And have we been able to take that ease of use, take those perceptions and so on, and create a meaningful and kind of seamless technology within the workflow of what people have to do? So I wanted to spend some time on that technology acceptance model and just kind of get your mind going a little bit. This is going to be a little bit of a kind of shorter episode because the next episode I'm going to bring in a little bit more on technology acceptance, but also talk about some of the technologies that exist that are kind of thought to be omnipotent to some degree, like AI. Some people think AI is omnipotent to some degree because it's the quote unquote answer for all of our problems and the savior for some of the challenges that we have. But I think if we drive in a different mindset, different style of thinking when it comes to technology, we may need to slow down a little bit. And most people want to move fast, right? I can think about how many different models were already on ChatGPT 4.0. I can't even remember what the very first model of ChatGPT was. We know that China is creating their own AI. It's the one with the well. I can't remember the name of it because I don't use it. But we're moving pretty quickly, right? These things are advancing, and we know that some people are often afraid of, can AI become sentient? Can AI do what it needs to do? And if I go back, we know that there's limitations that are provided or created and inside of the systems themselves. But if people's mindsets are thinking on, hey, I don't want to use AI, I don't believe in AI because it's going to take over the world, there is a strong consideration that it possibly could, right? If you think about the world of nuclear power and nuclear energy, we could power the world with nuclear energy, and it doesn't take a lot. But we happen to, and granted, we do power some things with nuclear energy. We do power submarines and so on. But the power behind nuclear power is actually used for kind of weaponry. It's used for war, if you will. And there's a Google executive, he's no longer with Google, but he actually said that, hey, look, it's the same kind of concept and conceptual framework that people think of when it comes to AI. So wanted to just share this, get your mind rolling a little bit on technology acceptance. Let me know what you think. We'll do it again in a couple days. And as always, thanks for listening to this quick episode on the coldest side of the pillow. We'll talk to you later.